All right, Brett, can you hear me?
I can.
All right, we're back. That was awesome. Thank you. I didn't have the audience applause queued up for you yet, but I'll do it from my end.
You can get it next time.
That's right. So we've got some time for Q&A here. Go ahead and put any questions that you have in the Q&A box. It should be at the bottom of your screen. Just type it into there, and Brett and I will talk about your question. We've got some great questions already, so we'll dive into those. But if you have any struggles, again, chat box me, and I'll help you out with your Q&A. But we'd love to hear your questions. So one of the questions that I got towards the beginning was, lots of people read great books, and I am sure that you have read books prior to Traction and great business books. Although you said you didn't love reading them all. What was it about Traction that not only clicked that you liked it, but then you went out and implemented it, and also did you implement it yourself?
So, great question. So, I think the thing that made the most sense to me about EOS was, again, the model and the 5 foundational tools. So, when you read Traction, it lays out really early, here's what we're going to strengthen. And it wasn't until I read that I realized that the system isn't going to tell me how to run my business. The system's going to set the stage for a strong business so I can do what I want. Okay. So I've got a bit of an independent streak. So I didn't want to be, held hostage by the system, but I realized it was just laying out the components. And then 5 foundational tools. When I shared that picture, there are 20 tools, but there's 5 foundational tools. And so I looked at it and I said, I can make this happen. This can come together. So it just resonated with me. I liked it. I liked the way Gino writes. And so that just made sense to me. I also saw a presentation of somebody doing an EOS overview. And
Mm-hmm.
so I was able to connect the book with some of the tools that this guy showed us. So it just clicked for me. The first time I implemented EOS, I did it on my own. And what I found was we did well on the vision component. We were able to get a clear vision.
Mm-hmm.
We did pretty well from a traction and execution standpoint. Now it's hard to hold yourself accountable, and it's hard to always lead the business and run sessions and do all the accountability. But I did okay there. Where we really did not do well is on the team health side. So good on vision, good on execution, not so good on team health. And that ended up being a downfall for us long run.
Okay.
The second time I implemented EOS was in a friend's business. We hired an implementer.
Nice. And then how long in your experience does it take before you start to settle into an operating system and get that, this is going to fix some of my problems feeling? Because I'm sure at first it's a lot of work, but
Yeah.
an implementer, I'm sure they make it easier, but you're still going to be stuck with that time where you're implementing.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a great question. It's interesting. The first day, you're always excited. You got clarity, you got stuff to work on. About 90 days into the system, people realize, oh my gosh, I've got all these issues to fix in my business because they never had clarity.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you kind of feel a little overwhelmed about 60, 90 days in. And then another 90 to 180 days, you start feeling on top of
Mm.
it. Okay. So 6 months in, probably, and definitely by 9 months, you're feeling like, yeah, man, I'm on top of this business. I can run it and really scale it. Early on, um, you're like, I can see it, but there's a lot of work to do. So
Yeah.
it's a good bit of work. Now, in terms of the just overhead of running the system, that should be absorbed and be pretty easy in 60 to 90 days.
Nice. It's funny that to me really mirrors the process with a new employee too. I call the first 90 days the honeymoon period. It gets real after the honeymoon period, and then eventually, 6 to 12 months later, you hit flow. And it sounds like this is very much the same type of thing. The first 3 months are going to be fun and interesting. Then you put in the effort, and then you get to that point where you can actually sit back and go, okay, this is some good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And my goal, and I think any good implementer's goal, is to get that team proficient with the system so they're not dependent on us. Okay,
Hmm.
so that's part of the journey, getting you comfortable with it. You can run yourself on your own, and I go someplace else.
You're working yourself out of a job.
Yeah.
That's great. So we had some people wonder what the people were thinking when they say they're stuck. And that was one of your poll questions. What's usually going on? And I'm not sure all entrepreneurs could articulate, but what's going on when somebody says I'm stuck?
Yeah. So a really kind of recurring theme is I meet people that they start a business, they start in their garage with a buddy, they hired a few people, and for a while they were 7, 8, 10 people in their business, and they're constantly growing and serving customers. And then at some point, they had to grow, so they added some technology, some more employees, some more office space, and it was just all complexity around them. Okay. Issues popping up from growth, maybe not clear processes, maybe not the right employees, and they spend all their time managing issues, firefighting, instead of growing your business.
Mm.
It's this COVID thing has been a microcosm of that, right? All of a sudden, we're spending all our time managing all the issues instead of growing. And when complexity builds up, people feel the same thing.
So somebody wrote something that I think kind of plays into that, about complexity and policies. It sounds like the EOS and a lot of operating processes have a lot of rules that feel like they would distract you from the business and create a lot of lumbering, slow policy and procedure. How does that? Yeah, I know from experience that's not what happens, but can you kind of explain how it's different from that?
Yeah. And one of the reasons that I resisted systems when I had my business was like, I don't want to be a slave to process documentation. And as I got into it, and I can really only speak from the US perspective in this context. When we talk about things like clarifying our vision, it's 2 pages. We talk about process documentation, we're aiming for 1 to 2 page process documents. So your accounting process or sales process or operations process, not a 30-page manual, a 1 or 2 page, here's the way we do it, okay? And so what we do is we go way the other way towards not rigid policy and procedure, framework, and we rely on right people, right seats, and the right culture to fill in the gaps. And what I mean is you've got a choice here on the ends. You can lay out every single step of the process like the military does it, but then it's a lot to maintain. And when people hit an unusual situation, they don't know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can do what we do is say, hey, here's generally the way we do it. We're going to get the right people in the right seats, the right values. So when they have to make a decision because the process isn't specific, they're going to make the right decisions. Does that make sense? It's kind of a long answer.
Yeah, no, that's great.
So I hear you, but it's really not that once you get the systems and things operating. As a matter of fact, everything takes less time usually.
The process is to create a framework that creates simplicity. You just have to work on a lot of things to get the right framework.
Yeah, and the glue, again, the thing that makes all that come together is core values, right people, right seat.
Gotcha.
That's when you don't have to have all the procedure.
Along the lines of that, we've got a question wanting you to talk more about the cultural shift that's required for BOS to succeed and some of the typical points of resistance and how these can be overcome.
Okay. So culture shift, there's a lot of things that happen here. One is moving towards a values-oriented organization, saying we're going to drive a certain set of values, a certain focus, a certain philosophy through our business. And in order to work here, you have to do these things. Okay. This isn't a nice to have. Okay. This is, you have to fit the culture first, and then we'll talk about your capabilities afterwards. Okay. So that's one, just realizing that right people is the first thing we got to identify. Another is realizing that the vision and the strategy isn't just for the leadership team. Okay? The vision needs to go down throughout the organization. Okay? And a lot of this is the leader of the organization letting go. Okay? So he or she has to realize that their job isn't a parental, I'm going to take care of everybody. I'm going to define the vision and direct everybody which way to go. It is, I play a key role in clarifying this vision, but then I want everybody to share it and buy in so I can trust them to do the right things.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of goes back to the previous question. As we shift this culture from, hey, I'm the smartest guy in the room, I'll tell everybody what to do, to I'm going to share the vision with everybody, then we don't need the minute process detail because we can trust people to make the right decisions.
Mm-hmm. So playing off of that, you know, so the leadership gets in a room, they spend these 1 to 3 days, it looked like, off site, figuring things out, figuring out what the mission is, what some of that framework is, and then goes back to the employees and says, you need to get on board with this or you're not the right cultural fit. How do you bridge that gap? Because I know you do, but how do you bridge that gap for the engagement so that the employee buys in and they feel like part of that process or thought?
Right. So you kind of tongue in cheek answered the question in that it's rather than here's what we're doing, you need to buy in or get off the bus. It's, hey, here's a system that we're adopting to make us better leaders, and it's going to make your life better.
Mm-hmm.
So let's really teach and explain how this works, how I can be a better manager of you, how you can be a better manager of your people. Okay. And it's a slow rollout of giving people tools that make sense to them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So think of a scorecard. Instead of me walking in to Josh's office and saying, you better hit these metrics or, you know, a week from Tuesday, you're off the bus. I say, look, let's talk about the scorecard. Let's talk about what are the activities you need to do to hit your numbers, and how do we use this as a tool for you to hold your people accountable to the right level of activity.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where you've got to be a leader and a manager. Now we teach leadership and management, okay, but you've got to be willing to take that down through the organization.
Mm-hmm.
Most of EOS is, or in most of these systems, is following the process. The one thing the system can't do is make you care about the people in your business. Mm-hmm. If you don't care about them, I can't help you, nobody else can help you. Okay. If you do care about them and you're willing to use the tools to make them successful, they'll know it and you'll be able to implement.
Yeah. And I would say from, you know, some of the feedback I've heard from peer executive group members who've been through your process and done similar things, one of the benefits that you find is transparency, and that a lot of times it's not that people didn't want to follow the framework or achieve the KPIs or whatever you want to call those things. It's that they didn't know what they were. There was no clear vision for that. And so they're actually relieved once you finally say, this is where we're going, this is what we're doing, and this is why we're doing it. Oh, well, that makes sense. That's what we've been trying to do. I wasn't sure. I didn't know. So I'm sure you get that a lot. But we are running it at the end of our time now. So I did want to give you a moment so that everybody else could figure out where they can find out more about you, Brett, your company, and reach out and contact you after this. And also, if you have a second, tell us a little bit about the session that you're going to be doing a month from now. That's going to be a little bit more focused on the operating system that you use.
Yeah. So my information's on the screen. I am absolutely glad to answer questions, help you. My second favorite thing in the world is helping people put EOS in their business and get what they want. My first favorite thing is helping them put EOS in their business and also getting paid for it. Okay. So I'm glad to do either. Okay, so if you just want to ask a question, no obligation, call me up, send me an email, text me, carrier pigeon, whatever works. So I'm absolutely glad to help. Next month, what we're going to get into is more EOS specific. Okay, how does the model come together? Remember, we talked about models, tools, and process. The model is pretty simple. How do we use the tools and process to start strengthening your business? Okay, what I'd like to come away with is you having a good understanding, here's how the system comes together, okay? And then depending how much interest in further sessions, give you tools where if you decide to do this yourself or experiment with it, you can.
That's great. And then is there any homework that you might recommend somebody think about before attending the next webinar that would add for good conversation or prepare them to take advantage of it the best?
Well, I'd say read up on EOS. And I'd encourage you, if you haven't already, to look for Get a Grip. It's an EOS book that's written as a story. If you've ever read any Patrick Lencioni books, he calls them business fables. It's written the same way. It's a fictional account of a company implementing EOS. It's a story. It's a more interesting and a lot quicker read. So check that out.
Great. Awesome. Well, Brett, thank you so much for joining us today. We're excited to have you back in a month. We'll be mailing that out to everybody. We'll also be emailing it to you directly for everybody who was in attendance today, and Brett will reach out to follow up with you if you had any additional questions. So thank you, everybody, and we hope to talk to you soon. Bye.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Josh.
Thank you.